But tell me something. How 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 will you separate the environments? Because now we are seeing like this approach that you have a multi-account strategy, and in which in dev you wouldn't need so much scaling only for testing times, right? And then I guess that the question that Victor asked before comes more into play. How do you plan it, or how do you do this kind of? Do you even work in a multi-account strategy?
But in a dev, the logic is still the same, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if I have a system that goes to some some database, something that has metrics,
Yep.
and asks, okay, so what was the usage, this or that, and adjust accordingly by scaling up and down or left and right or both, right? So then, if you have in dev, if you have that in dev, your memory and CPU usage will most likely be much smaller, right? And
Yep.
it will find much smaller numbers, and it will
Mm-hmm.
scale down to smaller number of replicas, right? So the logic is still the same, right? The question is only whether you want to bother or no. But if you already set it up for production to be like that, then it's basically no additional effort to have the same scaling capabilities and whatever else you have in other environments. However, in dev environments, the real cost is not really the how much memory and CPU you're consuming, and through that how big of your nodes are, and so on and so forth. The 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 biggest bottleneck in dev for many organizations is that they're using permanent environments. What
Yeah.
that means is that you're spinning up some development environment for the whole team, for the company, for individuals, whatever it is, and that something is running all the time,
Yep.
right? And that produces two very potentially big issues. One is that you're wasting money like crazy, right? That doesn't matter whether your memory consumption is correct or no. You're still running compute while you're sleeping,
Yep.
and unless you're very very rich, that's just silly. And at the same time, because those things are expensive, you are not only wasting too much money but never having enough, right? That's why
Mm-hmm.
usually organizations have one or two dev environments, and to me that's unacceptable. I don't want to have two dev environments. I want to have as many dev environments as I have people in my company. I
Mm-hmm.
want to have thousands, but I want them to be active and to be running only when they're used.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, I'm going to reduce cost, but also enable people to be effective, because big part, and I feel that this is probably the area that is often forgotten in FinOps, is that the biggest cost are people. Let's start with that. That's
Yep.
what costs the most, right? And whenever somebody needs to wait for something, that's the cost. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I need to wait because Joe needs to finish something over there before I can start working on that something. That's a cost
Mm-hmm.
that is often overlooked, because, hey, we actually measure the tangible things. We measure how much servers cost and how much networking costs and what's not. We often forget that we are wasting people's time, right? So I want at the same time to make people more productive, but also by giving them everything that they need, that there is no bottleneck in what we do, but at the same time use the absolute minimum amount of resources. And to accomplish that, the solution is simply to use ephemeral environments, or ephemeral servers, or ephemeral applications, or whatever else. Everything ephemeral, right? Production is permanent. I have
Mm-hmm.
permanent clusters that run production, and the nodes in those clusters are going up and down, scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, hey, I'm going to start working on this. Excellent. I get the environment in a few seconds, maybe a minute. I do whatever I'm doing. The moment the system detects that I haven't been working on it for whatever period of time, let's say 5 minutes, it goes down.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like we are seeing, so we have, I've seen two approaches. One is like the permanent dev and the permanent Q&A, like shared environment with everyone gets there and all the stuff is deployed there. And then we are seeing another approach that is the ephemeral. Like every developer has its own ephemeral cluster. In this case, if it's a deployment or a workload, depends on if you do it on namespace basis. And then you deploy everything there. You test whatever you want, and then it will be deployed for, I don't know, whatever hours or whatever time. And then if there is no activity in there, it will be shut down. And it's also, and I don't know if you test it out, but if you can connect it with the PRs stuff, so when everyone creates a pull request for testing a feature, you can just set it out to create the environment, and then when that's merged, of course, is closed. But then beforehand, it can be also closed for that. What do you think about that approach?
No, same thing with PRs. As long as that is, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a PR or it's a dev environment or whatever it is. If it's not active, shut it down, right? And we have solutions for that these days, right? You can, let's say if we stick with Kubernetes, you can use Knative that will scale down your application to 0 replicas. You can use vCluster to easily create cluster and destroy it. It's kind of a virtual cluster, depending on some actions. There are plenty of solutions, right? And of course, it all requires work. But it's not that much of a work either. The biggest bottleneck usually in getting there is that our applications need to change. And this is also the area where I feel that many FinOps focused people are struggling, right? I can do this, I can do that, but I cannot ask you to rewrite your application, for example, right? That's a no-go. Nobody allows that. And very often your application is a bottleneck. Like maybe, for example, let's say that your application cannot scale to multiple replicas. It is not fully stateless, what's not, right? So if you cannot scale, we cannot optimize the usage of resources, because then we need to assume the worst case scenario, the whatever is the maximum that we expect ever to happen, right?